Welcome again, our pick and roll with BJ and the coach, BJ Armstrong, my favorite point since Isaiah Thomas. How are you, brother?
Oh, that's good. Okay. That's great.
Hey, you loved him too. You loved him too.
It's good. How you doing today? How are you
I,
doing? How are you
I
doing?
you know what? I don't have any bad days anymore. I haven't lost a game in a couple of years. I'm doing really well. I'm doing really good. BJ, here's what we're going to start with today. Tomorrow night in the great Alamo city of San Antonio, the Spurs
Mhm.
are going to host our Golden State Warriors, the defending world champions. And they've sold already 63,592 tickets, the
Wow.
largest attendance for any game in the history of the NBA. Thoughts
Wow.
on that?
Well, they're big fans down there in San Antonio, and they've had a tremendous run, you know, starting going all the way back to the ABA, and then all of a sudden Tim Duncan and David Robinson and one of our good friends, Avery Johnson and company. And they've just had a tremendous run down there, and they're just amazing fans. So it doesn't shock me, Coach Kerr and Coach Pop, and you bring it in, Steph Curry and all those guys. So I think it's great. It's great for the NBA, and I
Yeah.
think I'll be tuning in.
On ESPN. So let me ask you, you played as a player because that was their home court,
Yep,
probably, I coached my first couple of years in the league at the Hemisphere Arena, which was right
I played
downtown.
down there too. Played down there.
Yeah,
I
I
played
mean,
in that
a
too.
great little venue with the baseline bums down there screaming and
The
cussing at
baseline
you.
pumps. That's going
I
way
love
back.
those guys. They were the best. But now the Alamodome, I think was built to get an NFL team. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
and a great venue hosts Final Fours, but not a good basketball venue, of course. But what did you think when you played in there? Did you have any trouble with depth perception or anything like that?
I always struggled. Um, Anytime I played in the dome, I always
Yeah.
struggled, whether it was in the Alamo Dome. I played down there in the New Orleans in the Superdome
Ooh.
for a couple exhibition games. Remember in Minneapolis, they had a dome up there
Yeah. Yep.
with Minnesota, the Timberwolves. I struggled in that. I always struggle. The one I can vividly remember struggling was remember when Toronto first came in the league and they used
Sky
to
Dome.
play at the Sky Dome. So I've always struggled. So I'm not a huge fan, sorry, NBA, of dome type venues for shooting purposes. But however, I think it's pretty cool that many people will show up to watch a
Yeah.
game.
I remember, when I was with the Pistons, we played an exhibition game in the Sky Dome, and there were I don't care what they say, there were 50, 60,000 people for an exhibition game, so this is
Right.
not regular season, and they and, uh, and Chuck turned and said, "This would be a great NBA city." And he was right on. He was right on, man. I tell you what, and it's been a fabulous city. But, I'm happy for the San Antonio fans,
Right.
who have always been great, and, I've coached many games in there, but I don't think I ever had a game there more than 20,000 fans in that venue in this Alamo Dome, so it'll be fun to watch. Uh, Ironically, Steve Kerr was a Spur, and those are the 2 coaches in there, but both of them who I think they're the they're kind of our spokespeople and leaders in our league,
Right.
Pop and Steve, both ironically, s Pop being the last Olympic coach, Steve being the next Olympic coach for us, both made an interesting comment separately last week where the message was the biggest problem in the NBA is transition defense. Not for
Mm.
our fans, that means getting back on defense. We see the amazing number of points scored. Uh, how does one for as a fan, it's not that doesn't necessarily mean players aren't hustling, right? But
Right. Right.
how can you have what are some ways that when you played with the Bulls, you know, how does one way that or a couple of ways that you might be able to avert bad transition defense as a player or coach?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a big question. I mean, you and I could spend all day just talking about that. However, I'll try to do this as quickly as we can. Now we're in this league now where we play a pace and space, and everyone wants to play at a certain speed. And there were the best way that I can put it. You talk about transition defense is your best defense is your offense. If you want to have a good defensive team, you better play a solid offense, and you want to have the proper spacing and the proper balance on the floor. I think it's very difficult in defense of what, Coach Pop and Coach Kerr are talking about is these players now are so skilled from the perimeter in transition because it was always taught, at least I learned, you always run back to the paint and then you
Yep.
defend from the inside out. Now, you'll have a 2-on-1 break and a guy will pull up and shoot a three. All right.
Yep.
So that's what you see. So I think now the spacing on the court and how far the distance that these guys are shooting from with accuracy, I might add, is really causing a problem in transition defense. I think in half court, you can figure out ways to defend when the game is in half court. You got 5-on-5, but in transition, coach, I really think it's a problem because frankly, these players are shooting with such accuracy
Hmm.
in transition that it's tough to cover the three and not give up something, right? And you're giving up drive and kick, and you're giving that up, and these guys are shooting in them and they're making them.
Let's. So I remember Chuck Daly, who we both have fondness and played. You played for, and I coached under. His thing, as you mentioned in the beginning, a lot had to do with your offense. So number one, you can't turn the ball over. So if you come
Right.
down and you're running a fast break, you throw the ball to the other team, you're definitely going to have bad transition defense
Yes.
because you
Yeah.
have too many players down. Uh, the other one is the way to stop poor transition defense is to get to the foul line.
You're right.
Because if I
Right.
can get to the foul line, now all of a sudden I'm shooting free throws. We have 2 people on the foul line, the shooter and 2 people back, so we're in good shape.
Hmm.
Another thing that, Chuck emphasized was offensive rebounding, and when you
Yep.
have someone like Rodman and stuff like that, getting that ball back after missed shot is so important,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I just think those are some things, a and I think I feel badly now for the big men in the league because our as guard you would love playing now. As a guard, you come down and you shoot the first open shot, that's what they're teaching, but as a big man, I'm hustling down there, and that shot goes up, and I get to the top of the key, and I go, "Oh, shit," and I gotta turn around, and I gotta run back, and I
Right.
didn't even get down there to touch the ball. I think that's another problem and stuff. But you made a great teaching point, BJ. Back years ago, prior to the three-point shot avalanche, we taught our players to run back, put your head under the
Yeah.
point
Under
guards,
the
put your
basket.
head under the rim
Under the basket.
and get
That's right.
under the paint. You do that now, you're giving up Steve Curry. I mean,
Wait.
the Steph Curry and those guys, it's a joke. You can't run
Yeah.
back inside the three-point line, I don't think
No,
anymore.
it really is. It's an interesting game, and I'm conscious of that as I'm watching the game today because they do things so different than what
Mhm.
I learned how to play, and you were teaching during that time, and it became it just became natural way of thinking. You get back, you get back into the paint, get back and stop the ball, and then you would get out to get your guy. Well, now you'll see guys give up a layup and everyone's like, okay, that's cool. You're like, what?
Yeah.
So it's just these guys are running to the literally running to the 3-point line. I mean, I can't recall seeing so many players with the freedom to just dribble up during a transition and just pull up from three. All right. And beyond the three. And, when you see Damian Lillard, you see Steph Curry, you seeing these guys just dribble up there and do it. So it's a new game and it's a new way. But I think you made great points with offensive rebounding, limiting, guys' shots. You definitely have to do that. You definitely have to limit your turnovers. And then you know what? You definitely have to offensive rebound. I mean, that's the key. However, as you're saying, offensive rebounding, how are you going to offensive rebound and you're playing a 5-out offense? So it's another
Yeah.
dilemma that you have to consider as you're talking about those.
and
Those were
our
principles for us.
and Pop teaches on his team, which is so contrary to when we were you know, in the league. He teaches all 5 players, unless you're under the basket, run back on defense as soon as the shot goes up. Don't even try for an offensive rebound, which I don't
Really?
believe in. Yes, he teaches all 5 players back unless you are in the paint. Then you can go try to get an offensive rebound, then you must sprint back. Very conflicting to we used to have what we call 2.5 or 3 to the boards. Tom
Right.
Izzo, Michigan State, 4 of the 5 players go to the offensive boards. I mean, and Kelvin Sampson, all 5 players, number 1 team in the college basketball, all 5 players go to the offensive glass.
Hey, I always wanted to ask you this. Or did Dennis just do this naturally? John Sally kind of did it too, to jam the rebounder.
Yeah, no, that was something that we taught. Mike Fratello was the first one that ever showed me that when I was with him with the Hawks. Mike was a great coach, a UB disciple, and when the player got a defensive rebound and you were right behind him, he had blocked you out, got the
Mm-hmm.
your job was to turn, I mean, to go right up on him, put your hands up,
And
and try to block him from easy outlet, so they could get the ball out quick. Uh, Now, I never see any player doing that.
no, I don't see that
No.
as well. But I remember we
That
were conscious that you guys talking about the Pistons, you guys would do that, or Dennis would do it.
yeah,
I don't know if he did it
y
naturally or
you
not.
know, and that was something that we had, Mike Fratello had taught, and it really worked, and it was because just you delay getting that ball to a great point guard. Yeah, I know you always
Hmm.
talked about how Stockton always came back to the ball and stuff like that,
Right, right,
but you get the ball to Ja Morant, like, super quick. You're in trouble because he's coming
right.
at you full head of speed. So, yeah, that was Fratello. In fact, we'll go
Mm.
have an Italian dinner on Mike the next time we see him, and we'll get we'll get credit for that. Hey,
Absolutely.
hey, BJ, tonight, the Brooklyn Nets, who are the hottest team in the league, I think
Right.
won, 18 of the last 20 games or
Yes.
some ridiculous thing. They're gonna play their first game without Kevin Durant, you know,
Hmm.
uh and he's gonna be out a minimum of 1 month.
Wow.
How they're 2nd, I believe, in the Eastern Conference right now, which I think is an absolute miracle. Jacques Vaughn has been incredible doing that,
Yes.
getting that team together. Uh, h how do you think they're gonna survive, or what do you think they need to do to survive?
Wow. Well, you're going to lose an MVP caliber player. And Kevin Durant, when he's healthy, he is without question one of the elite players in this league. I would go so much to say he's one of the elite guards to ever play as
Mhm.
far as on the offensive end. You think of Jordan, you think of Kobe Bryant, you think of George Gervin. Well, I think of Kevin Durant as well. I put him right in there as far as an NBA scorer. He is, you hear this term now, a professional scorer. Kevin
Mhm.
Durant is a professional scorer. He's the first player that I've ever said this about. He's open every time he catches the ball because he's a 7-footer. He can see
7-foot
over
player.
every, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he's a so all of us little guards or 6'6" or 6'7", you got to make a move to get open. Kevin Durant is already open every time he catches the ball, which I just thought it was very interesting because he doesn't have to make. He can just shoot over the top of anyone. Um, to answer your question, how are they going to do it? I think they're going to do it on the defensive end. They're getting a lot of recognition for what they're doing and how they're playing, especially Kevin Durant now, who's going to miss, and Kyrie Irving. However, defensively, I thought Kevin Durant was playing some of his most
Mhm.
consistent basketball on the defensive end. His ability to help. He's a very versatile defender. Even though he has a small frame, he absorbs the contact, and people forget he's every bit of 7 feet plus, and with
Yep.
his length. So I think they're going to miss him on the defensive end. I think they're going to have to figure out how to slow the game down a little bit because they don't have Kevin Durant who can really just go out there and score. And he's capable of doing 30, 40 at any given moment. So I think Kyrie Irving is going to have to slide over and be and be a volume player, right? He's got to get up 25 plus shots every single night. Whether or not he shoots
That's a great
50%
point.
is one thing. He's got to get those shots up, which will give them an opportunity to get a quality shot, to get an offensive rebound. And if he's hot, now you're cooking. Now you got something going. So I think they will rely more on their role players. I think they'll probably do a lot more screen roll stuff because you're going to have to utilize Kyrie's ability to create offense for others as well. Because those guys, you're taking Kevin Durant, who demanded a double team. So I still think they can play 500 basketball without him. I really do. I think they
Yeah,
have enough veteran players to do that. However, defensively, I think they're where they're going to miss him the most.
I think so. I think Ben Simmons has to finally really step up. He's been passing, he's been
Right.
rebounding, he hasn't been scoring at all, not even hardly shooting. But he's got to get back to the way he played in Philly. Every time Embiid went out, BJ, he had as many as 39 points at Utah one night without Embiid.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
and he was a 20 plus scorer without Embiid. He's got to get, I think, 15 to 17 points a game. And he's got to get to the foul line. He's got to get over this not even attempting a free throw thing because
Right.
he's 6'10", and he can drive and he can get to the goal and he can get to the line, frankly, 10 times a game if he gets aggressive. He's got to play. Claxton's got to play big. Uh, and Steph's brother, Seth Curry, has to really make shots. And,
Yep.
I think all their shooters have to start really making shots, but I don't know if they're going to get the open shots they get, you
No,
know,
they're not going to
guys.
get that. They're not going to get that. And like I said, I think Kyrie is going to have to generate enough shots.
I
He's got to get 20 to 25 shots every single night.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's
Okay.
gotta be a 40-point scorer, which is a lot to
Yeah.
ask of a guy, but
Yeah.
but he's been playing great. He has been.
Yeah.
He's been playing
Yeah.
great.
Absolutely.
Hey, your LA Clippers, and I'm saying that only because of location of where you're living, uh, they were before the season, people were saying talent-wise, 1 through 15, they've assembled the most talent on a team. But because of Kawhi and Paul George, I think Kawhi has played, uh, less than a third of the games, uh,
Right.
and the other guy has missed, like, 12 games, of the
Hmm.
42. Um,
Hmm.
what must they do to make the playoffs? They went from a team that could win the championship to make the playoffs and really be, a threat, you think?
Well, I was one of those people in the media and watching, and I threw my 2 cents in there as well. What do you think of the Clippers? I said on paper they look terrific. They have a lot of
Mhm.
depth. I love the fact that they had a lot of wing players: Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. They had a lot of guys who could play on the wing. Terrence Mann. There were a lot of guys that you're saying, wow, they could defend the Lucas, and they got a lot of players who could do that. The Jalen Browns, if they met those guys, the Seth Currys. Okay. However, they have a huge ingredient that's missing. I've never seen it happen before. I was teased and I was intrigued by what I saw in Toronto a couple years ago. Your best player, or one of your best players, you put him in with no continuity, right? They just plugged him in. Kawhi Leonard was playing every other game. He missed a lot of games that year in Toronto, and lo and behold, they won the championship. Now I became intrigued. I had never seen that before, that you miss so many games and then it works out in the end. However, he's had some injuries since that time. He's coming off of a significant injury now as we currently speak. And when you watch him play the other night, you go, God, if he plays like this, he has like 36, 38 points. You're saying what could be? I think, coach, the rest of the team, the role players in particular, they don't have any continuity or flow or rhythm, especially when it comes down to crunch time. How are you going to execute in what I call them need plays and must scoring defensive plays? There's a certain thing you learn about your team during the course of an 82 game schedule. The 82
Right.
game schedule is to me, the dress rehearsal before the dance.
Right.
And I don't think they have enough time to do it. Now, what I found intriguing as I look back on that Toronto team was they were a very veteran ball club. They had leadership. Kyle Lowry, Van Fleet, Marc Gasol. They had Serge Ibaka. They had veteran players who, if given an opportunity, they could perform because they were already pros. However, I don't know about this Clipper team, and I think Kawhi's leadership needs to be there every day so that they can learn how to play with him. But more importantly, what he has to do to help this team. And right now, they're losing games that, frankly, they should be winning.
Mm.
And they've lost a lot of those games, and a lot of those games is because those guys haven't been available. So, to me, it's very simple. The best ability is availability. You have
Mm.
to be available to play. It's very simple. I know it's cliche, but you got to be available, and that comes about with continuity on how to play as a team. And right now, when you watch those guys, some nights Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, when they play, they look fantastic.
Whew.
I
Amen.
mean, what a team. But I've never seen it, so I'm going to just go with what I know, which is, what, if guys aren't available every night, what can you expect?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I look at it.
I think that's a great observation. As we talk about and we watch games every night, it's overwhelming. Um, when I first came into the NBA, there were no pick and rolls, none. I
Right.
mean, now if it's not fast break, it's a pick and roll almost every
Mhm, mhm,
possession.
mhm.
And when you first came into the league, pick and rolls were played a certain way. They were hard hedging or what we
Right.
call blitzing or trapping pick and rolls because you were
Right,
a
right.
good guard.
Mm.
MJ, Pippen are good guards, so they're trapping those guys all the time, getting the ball out of their hands. Now it's completely different. So there's 3 basic things I've noticed that, and I want your opinion as a guard on this. When the ball's on the sidelines, what we call side pick and rolls,
Okay.
uh, v back in when you first came in the league, there was no one that was what we call icing or forcing the pick and roll to the sideline,
Right.
right?
Right.
And now it's almost it's done over 50, 60% of the time, I would think. How how would you and that's the purpose of that for our listeners is so that, the guard can't use the screen to come off of. Um, what how if you were playing or watching the best guards play,
Mhm, mhm.
how would you attack that as a player? You
On
know,
the defensive end. On the
on
defensive end or
as
on the offensive end?
on the offensive, if the people were forcing you, sideline every time, what can you do against that?
Well, the first thing as an offensive player, back then most teams called it blue, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay, blue, and that meant you would push it here. And what I always tried to do was I would dribble directly at the big
Mhm.
and to force him to make a decision.
Right.
Because bigs really they don't really want a guard who's, if you're low, you're coming right at them. They just don't like that. They don't want that, and they don't want to pick up an unnecessary foul versus a guard. Okay, that was the first thing I also, if I'm playing the Knicks and
And and
they're
and and
pushing me
just so
down.
our listeners can visualize it, that big when on the side pick and roll, he's down like on the low post on the lane almost, and so you're coming
Mhm.
at him pretty quickly. He's not like he's 4 feet away from you. He's 10, 12 feet away, and you're now dribbling at him pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I would always, I always, when I knew the teams were going to push me blue as a guard, um, I had a natural tendency to score first. Okay, that was my, and then I would
Yep.
look to pass if I were able to compromise the defense in some sort. Right, I always wanted to be a threat. So what I would do is I would always try to get below the free throw line to now, so that the weak side and a pass couldn't get there. Right, one dribble, I'm already into what I call the scoring area below the free throw line. Now they got to make a decision. Second, if I do make a bounce pass or the slip pass or whatever, that big can just dunk it, okay, and,
Right.
and compromise. Or if the big, if he came back too far, I had a nice, easy shot. So I always try to start my as an offensive player below the free throw line, and I try to get into it as quickly as I possibly could. Why? Is because I didn't want the weak side to be able to load up against me. Okay, if that's what they were doing. And I know bigs don't like it when guards come right at them. Like
Right.
that's not, they just don't, it's something they're not comfortable with. So I always try to do that. And it seemed to work for me as an offensive player is to get below the free throw line, make that big, make a decision, and to know that if he comes at me, I got the drop. If he doesn't, I pull up. And then, coaches like you would call a timeout and say, this guy shouldn't be scoring like that. So that's what I always tried to do.
I'd take Isaiah out of the game. You can't stop Armstrong, you're out. Hey,
Yeah, yeah.
now, which we didn't see, back when, again, you came in the league, was switching now on all pick and
Yeah,
rolls.
yeah, yeah, you didn't
Uh,
see that.
yeah, and the only one they're really not switching is if you have a really good big, like
Okay.
DeAndre Ayton, or, they really don't wanna switch because, or someone that can post you up or anything like that. They really don't wanna switch. So, um what would you do if you were playing now, or how would you take that? Better question is, what would you do as an offensive player, and who would you have put in the pick and roll with you? Now, it doesn't have to be a center. Who would you put in the pick and roll to really burn that defense from switching and penalize them? That's maybe the better question.
Yeah, yeah. You're saying if I'm the offensive
Your
player and I'm
offensive
playing
player,
against
yeah, you're the
a player,
offensive
yeah.
player. Who would you put as
Um,
your screener so that now when that guy switches on you, he's in trouble? You know
I can
what I
have any
mean? That
player throughout the history of the game. Is
No, I mean,
any player?
what
Oh,
on a team, what a player would you
oh.
attack? The best defender, the worst defender, etcetera, you know what I mean? That type of thing.
Um, well, today, that's a trick question for me, is because I played in an era where hand checking was legal, and as an offensive player, I can't. I saw guys average 30 and score with 30 points a night with hand checking. So now when guys say they're good defensive players, I have to
Right.
put it into context. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
right.
Like, how are you going to guard Isaiah Thomas, for instance, without hand checking the guy? How are you going to guard?
Yeah,
I mean, you and I saw Jordan average 37 a night with hand checking
scary.
and without the 3-point ball. Okay, so he
Right.
was getting 37 with hand checking, and he wasn't even the 3-point shot was like a heave in that era or that time. That's something you did at the end of the quarters. So what would I do? I I think what I would do is I wouldn't pick on the worst defender, and the reason being, um, is because the worst defender would compromise my offensive integrity. Okay, offensive integrity meaning we're running a play. I want to run my offense, and if I'm running sound offense, the ball will get to where it's supposed to get to, and we will do it within the context and the framework of the team without having to
Got
go
it.
to isolation.
Got
So
it.
isolations to me, as all the good coaches would tell me, we can go to that at any time. I want
Mhm.
to save that for critical moments of the game. Okay,
Yeah.
I know I can go to isolation. However, what I would like to do is if I have a mismatch, is to move the ball and get it to the weak side. I'm a huge fan of playing offense on the weak side. Why?
Hmm.
It's because most teams really don't know how to, when the ball moves from one side to the other, guys get lost. It's kind of
Yeah.
like so defensively, I
Great
always saw
point.
the greatest players always play offense from the weak side. That to me is like a little cheat code, right? In
Sure.
especially the professional game. How do I get the ball to the weak side and let my best player attack with the live dribble on the weak side of the floor?
Mhm.
Not just, oh, there's a mismatch. And I learned this from Don Nelson. Remember when Run TMC?
Yep.
Don Nelson would purposely put his worst defensive player on the best offensive player so that you would stop running your offense. And I vowed at that game, we got crushed because our best offensive players were like, oh, this guy can't guard me. And as you know, you play with mismatches. But when I saw us have the discipline to attack that player how we wanted to attack him, I vowed I would never fall for that trick again. So when I see mismatches, I would only attack it from the weak side and go, "Oh, this is what you're doing? Great. I'll do it when I'm prepared to do it, not when you want me to do it." And from there, that's kind of like a little cheat code. And I very rarely, with the exception of like the Detroit Pistons and a few other teams that had the wherewithal, if you want to call it that, to be able to play defense, great defense from the weak side. I caught the Celtics at the end of their run. I thought they were a really good defensive team from the weak side. Like Larry Bird was a
Yeah,
really good help defender. So that's kind of what I've learned.
that's
That's what
great.
I would do if I saw that and I knew I could attack that anytime.
Great insight. That's phenomenal. That's what I was looking for. That's big time stuff. You're going next week, my friend. We won't be able to do any shows next week because you're going to be on a work assignment. We in Paris,
Is
France.
this work? Watching basketball, is this work?
I'm being yeah, we're saying it's work, and you're gonna go see 2 of our favorite teams.
Yes,
They
yes,
You're gonna see your Chicago Bulls playing
yes.
my Detroit Pistons
Oh
in a
wow!
phenomenal regular season game in Paris. The
Right?
NBA, what a show it's gonna put on. I know you must be excited.
I really am. I'm really excited. It's just amazing to think we're watching games now abroad. I think it's just a matter of time before they have teams in places like Paris and London and
You
Germany and places like
you and
that.
I got Monaco if they put a team there. Woo! Uh,
Well,
love
yeah,
Monaco.
that would be a great place to scout. I can tell you that much.
I'm not looking to scout. No, I'm just thinking, what a place. Yeah. Uh, but, so you're going there, and it reminds me of right now, we have a lot of great French players in the league, but the
Right.
best is yet to come next year. Victor
Yes.
Wembanyama.
Wembanyama.
So maybe
Yes.
you can go do a little scouting while you're there and see Victor. And
Well, what is there to see? I mean, what is there to see now?
I'm trying to get write-offs, okay, partner? So the Wemby lottery, as we're calling it, the bottom 4 teams record-wise in our league get the same number of ping pong balls in the lottery. So right now, the Wemby lottery has Houston with 10 wins, MJ's Charlotte Hornets with 11, my Detroit boys with 12, and, the Spurs of Pop with 13.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, wow. I mean, what a thing that I don't know what the heck I would do on that night when those ping pong balls are going up if I'm one of those 4 teams. It literally can change your franchise. That's how good the
Yeah,
guy is, right? You think?
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. He is for sure. He is that level of talent. And the thing that when I watch him real quick is when I watch him play, even as a young player, he really stirs up my imagination
Mm,
because you can't just put him, in my opinion, he's just not a center. He's just not a power forward. He's just not a small forward. He's just not a point guard. But my imagination just runs wild when I watch him.
mhm.
And I had a chance to watch him live, and I really had to rethink about the game. And
Wow.
I think whoever has an opportunity to work with this young man, you better really and truly understand this game because there isn't anything that he can't do. I
Right.
mean, literally. I mean, he can. No, you've seen big guys who can dribble. No, he can really dribble. He can really shoot. He
Yeah.
can really block shots. He can really run. He can really defend. Hey, the best part of his game, he can really pass. Like, by the way.
Wow.
And now if you don't take advantage of all of these things, no, he does these things exceptionally well. He's just not okay at a lot of things. I mean, he's an elite shot blocker. He's an elite passer. He's an elite. I mean, he has a beautiful game. Like when you watch him shoot, you go, "Wow!" Like, and he's 7'4" shooting with arch.
Yeah.
He's got a beautiful shot, right?
Wow.
And this is the thing that's incredible. He doesn't need the ball to dominate the game. And that's very rare that you can say that about a young player.
Yep.
Now, I watched a guy score 37, 38 points, coach, on back-to-back nights, and he wasn't even like they weren't even playing through him. He was just
Mm,
doing this in the flow of the game. It was like so mind-boggling to me that he got 37 points and they weren't even like force feeding him. They weren't like we're he was just floating around. If he's open on the weak side, he shoot a three, he get a tip in. He was just it was
yeah.
unbelievable to watch.
Well, I would go and take a little side trip, I would tell your wife that you had to go out and do a little homework assignment, but I think it'd be fabulous. But, you have a great trip, my friend, and,
Hey, I
for those
definitely.
yeah, and when you get back, you will have to report on your seeings, all your sightseeing and stuff like that, and,
I definitely will
but,
do. I definitely will
yeah,
do.
no, hey, and there's nothing like, for those, our listeners, I hope you're enjoying it because, the pick and roll with BJ and the coach, w we you should have heard our pre-production meeting. I mean, it was off the charts. I mean, that's where we should start recording, but, if you really like it, you can go on any social media or on YouTube at pick and roll underscore show. Yeah, we even look better on YouTube, man, but, have a great trip, my
You look
friend.
better on YouTube. You look better on YouTube.
I'm trying to find ways to look better, and it's not working so far, but, I appreciate you being kind to your old coach. Thanks. Thanks, B. Appreciate
All
you.
right, thanks, coach. Yep.